Hey everybody, how y'all doing tonight? Good to see everybody out there. I am running solo. As most of us know, Grizzly is on the road out doing some traveling. So he's got me here all alone doing my thing, but I think we'll be all right tonight. Good to see everybody tonight. Let me see. Who do we got tuning in? Gary Spikes, as usual. We got Denise. Hey Denise, how you doing? Catherine Gay. Hey, Catherine. Penny Van, but she says she's going back to bed and she'll listen from there. Sweet dreams, Penny Van. Denise, Midwest Night Watchers. How you doing today? How you doing? Karma is a biat. Yeah, there you go. How you doing? Paranormal Pixie, welcome, welcome. Sharon Parker. Hey, Sharon, how's it going? Glad you could join us tonight. Liana King coming in. Gene Hudson from up north. Hey, Gene. Good to see everybody tonight. I hope everybody's doing good. It's been a long road, guys. I am back in Florida. Had a good time up in Tennessee and Kentucky. Had a lot of stuff going on. Do want to give a shout out. My future mother-in-law is in the hospital. She's been kind of in and out. So anybody that is a praying person, we just ask for prayers for her as she is having some issues. That would be Mama J, as we love to call her. So special prayers for Mama J tonight. As usual, guys, if you have any questions, we put it in all caps so I can keep an eye on it. It's just me, so I'll do my best to keep up with questions. Hey, Brian, how you doing? Brian Barber in the house. We're gonna have a good show tonight, guys. As you know, one of the things I like to look at is some of the urban legends, as I call them, that are in the cryptid world. We had a good show on Eric the Red and Leif Erikson. If he actually encountered Bigfoot, if you haven't seen that, go back and check out that episode. Tonight, we're going to discuss the legend of the Lovelock Caves and the red-haired giants. Okay, so I know this is a big one. A lot of people love the Lovelock Cave story and the red-haired giants. So we'll go over what the legend says, where it came from, and if there's any backing to it. Is there any facts that we can point to saying this is a real thing? I got to give a shout out actually to another podcast for inspiring me to do this one. If you guys have never heard of it, the Lore Lodge with Aiden Mattis is a podcast I highly recommend. Just because the guy digs super deep when he does a topic. He does it for basically a living, so he has the time and ability to just dig absolutely deep on everything. And he is a historian with a degree, and then that's what he does for work previously and stuff. So he just does really good work. He has a great episode on the Lovelock Caves and the red-haired giants. And he goes into a lot more in depth than I'm going to tonight. So if it's a topic that really interests you, if I kind of wet your whistle and what we go over tonight, I'd highly recommend going and checking out that channel and seeing what he has to say about it. So we're going to jump in. I do have to apologize. I am kind of on a low cycle with my health right now, so I'll probably be coughing and stuff a little bit throughout the show. So I apologize ahead of time for that. I'll try not to cough into the microphone, and I'll be taking lots of drinks. But let's go ahead and get started. Again, I'll just remind you guys, any questions that come up, put them in all caps. I'll do my best to address those as we go along. All right, so we have the legend of Lovelock Caves. So we'll start with the basic story. What is it? What are we talking about? All right, so here is a picture of the Lovelock Cave. It's from a tribe called the Paiute. As the Paiute tale goes, after years of warfare, All the tribes in an area joined together to rid themselves of what they called the Sitka. One day, as the tribes chased down the last remaining red-haired giants, they took refuge in a cage. The Paiutes demanded their enemies come out of the cave and fight, and the giants refused. And so the coalition of tribes proceeded to shoot arrows at them while starting a large fire at the mouth of the cave. Basically, the idea was the smoke would drive them out of the cave, and then they could shoot him down from there, or they would die in the cave. Over time, the entrance to the cave would collapse and leaving it accessible only to bats and cut off from human contact. So to break it down, basically, it was a tribe over in Nevada area, Lovelock Caves in Nevada. And historically, they had a war with a tribe of supposedly white-skinned, red-haired giants. And they were cannibals, and so they would attack the tribe, cannibalize on the tribe, and finally they had enough and they fought back. So this is kind of like the site of their final battle. And that's the legend of Lovelock Cave. That's what happened. And supposedly there is all kinds of archaeological evidence now for this cave and for this event. So that's what we're going to look into tonight. So the red-haired giants, they called them the Sitka. It literally translates as the Tule eaters in the Northern Paiute language. Tule is a fibrous water plant, like a reed, which, according to legend, was woven by the giants into rafts in order to escape attacks by the Paiute. They used the rafts to navigate across what remained then of Lake Lahontan, an ancient lake that once covered most of northern Nevada during the last ice age. The Paiutes, a Native American tribe indigenous to the parts of Nevada, have an oral tradition that they told to early white settlers of the area about a race of red-haired white giants or barbarians that their ancestors referred to as the Sitka. So this is kind of like local tribal legend. When the settlers came in, the white man came in, this supposedly was one of the stories that they heard. But is it real? So yes, the story is real, but no, it's not. But maybe it is, right? So I know that's confusing, but that's kind of where the research led. So that's what we're going to break it down. Little Twisted said elderberry syrup. I am a big fan of holistic natural medicine, Little Twisted. Elderberry syrup is absolutely fantastic for its antioxidants. But unfortunately, antioxidants will not heal what's wrong with me. But that's just how it is. But yes, elderberry syrup is great, especially if you're having colds or any of those kind of issues. So, is the story real? So, what it was traced to, the story was written down in 1882 by a woman named Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins, daughter of a Paiute Indian chief, in her book. The giants were described as being vicious, unfriendly, cannibalistic. And in this story, the Paiutes speak of the great battle that took place, which led to their extermination at the site known as Lovelock Cave. So it was written in this book by Sarah Hopkins. And this is her over here and her father. About the author, about Sarah Hopkins. So she was born 1841 and lived to 1891. She was notable for being the first Native American woman known to secure a copyright and to publish in the English language. She was also known by her married name, which was she wrote the book, which was Sarah Hopkins. She lived among, the book is called Life Among the Paiutes, The Wrongs and Claims. It's an autobiographical account of her people during their first 40 years of contact with the explorers and settlers. She was a person of two worlds. At the time of her birth, her people had only very limited contact with Euro-Americans. However, she spent most of her adult life in white society. I do have a couple of things highlighted here that we definitely want to point out. Many Paiutes view her as a collaborator who helped the U.S. Army kill her people. So she wasn't necessarily well liked within her tribe once she got westernized. Modern historians view her book as an important primary source, but one that is deliberately misleading in many instances. And I think that's an important part to understand. Despite that, Sarah has recently received much positive attention for her activism. She was inducted to the Nevada Writers Hall of Fame in 1993, and in 2005, a statue of her was added to the National Statuary Hall collection in the U.S. Capitol. So she is the author of the book that we're looking at, so it's part of her culture. But in the book, she actually does not mention giants. So even in the book that talks the story of the Sitka, she does not call them giants, but she does refer to them as barbarians. So that's point one. Even in the book that supposedly the story comes from, they are not referred to as giants. That is complete folklore. All right, so now the cave itself. Lovelock Cave. Known also as Bat Cave, Horseshoe Cave, Sunset Guano Cave, and Indian Cave. It's located 20 miles south of modern-day Lovelock, Nevada. It's a very old cave that predates humans on the continent, and in prehistoric times was actually underneath the Lake Lahontan. Little Twisted said, I wonder why. Yeah, I wonder why, but it's like when we studied on Leif Erikson, the book mentions one thing as a particular story, and then somebody reads it and kind of misinterprets or just kind of adds their own definition to what she's talking about. And then the story kind of grows from there. Like I said, just like we saw with Leif Erikson. In 1886, a mining engineer from Lovelock named John T. Reed was told of the legend by local Indians. Notice it says 1886. Double checking, the book was published in 1882. So even this guy did not hear of it until after the book was published. I could not find any documentation actually saying where this legend was around before her book. They do say it's an oral tradition of her people, but there's no other documentation of that other than this book. So we wanted to put that out there. He was told the legend by the Indians. He took them out there to the site to prove it existed, but he was unsuccessful in getting an archaeological dig started. After that, two miners, James Hart and David Pugh, realized the value of the bat guano as an ingredient for gunpowder and created a company to start digging it out in 1911. They stripped a layer of guano from the cave approximately 3 feet to 6 feet deep. That is one big pile of poop. Using a pick and shovel with little regard to any artifacts that they found. And they shipped some 250 tons of the bat guano to the Hawaiian Fertilizer Company in San Francisco. So the first activity was simply mining the guano for fertilizer and gunpowder. Alfred Kroeber, founder of the University of California Anthropology Department, was contacted by Hart and Pugh when they reported finding prehistoric artifacts in the guano. And this is what spurred the first archaeological dig of the Lovelock Caves in 1912, led by a gentleman of L.L. Loud, who was also of the University of California. So basically, these guys are in there harvesting the bat guano, and they're finding artifacts in the guano. And so they contact the Department of Anthropology, and they try and get somebody out, and this Alfred Kroeber sends out Mr. Loud. So this is an interesting part. Yeah, Brian Barber, that had to be a huge, sweet, and low box. Yep, 250 tons worth, buddy. Who is Loud? This is the part that really threw me, and really for me brings into question anything and everything people claim that has to come out of the Lovelock Caves, archaeological finds, and all this kind of stuff. And I think you'll agree with me as we go through this. So, who is L.L. Loud? I got this directly from the library at Berkeley .edu. The link is up there if you guys want to take a look at it. If you want, ask me and I can send it to you through DMs on Facebook or whatever. Actual documentation. I found this absolutely fascinating. I don't have all of it. A lot of it was just correspondence between different people, but it really gives an insight as to what was going on during this big archaeological dig. And it says Kroeber in 1912 was in charge of both the department and Museum of Anthropology. The department home was on the Berkeley campus, and the museum was at the affiliated college's 2nd and Parnassus Avenue, San Francisco. I copied this directly from the documents, guys, so it's going to have a little weird format in the slides. Some of the spelling might be weird, but I didn't want to mess with it. I wanted you guys to see exactly how it was written in these documents, these official documents. Kroeber had learned about the Lovelock Cave and some of the remarkably preserved cultural materials, which were found by James Hart and David Pugh during the guano removal operations of 1911, and decided to carry out work there in order to secure the collection for the university before relic hunters destroyed the site. I had to change it so I could finish reading that there. There we go. There were no archaeologists on the teaching staff of the department or in the museum who were available to be sent on short notice to Nevada. So, what did they do? They picked Mr. Loud. Well, no specific record. It appears that Kroeber asked Loud, who then was a guard in the museum, if he would care to go to Lovelock and make a collection of cave materials. So instead of finding a certified archaeologist trained in how to excavate a site and dig up artifacts and catalog them properly, they had the museum guard go out to this amazing site and to catalog it. That is mind-blowing. I mean, unreal to me. If this is supposed to be such a great find and a great site and they want to catalog it, hey, let's just get the guard to go check it out. So that's what they did. And again, this is still all from the official documentation that I found about the site and the letters between the people that were involved there. So far as is known, Loud had no experience at all in archaeology. And we do not know whether Kroeber even tried to instruct him on how to excavate properly or make records. Loud was unaware of the utility of recording the depth at which artifacts were found. So he had no clue how to dig. He had no clue how to catalog or anything like that. Yeah, Brian Barber. We need a scientist to go to that historic site. Let's get Jerry the janitor. I mean, that's pretty much it. And yet, it's funny because when you do a Google search just on the surface and you dig up Lovelock Caves, they don't mention that. They call him an archaeologist. They call him a teacher. They call him all these different things, but he never was. He never was. He did keep a rough record of the location of objects within the cave, to the extent that areas of irregular size and bounded by the cave wall or fallen rocks were designated as lots, and all material recovered from each lot was kept separate and so cataloged. He dug 41 lots whose total surface area covers roughly 1/8 of the cave floor. So whenever we see archaeological digs like on TV or if we're doing research on them, they're cut off into a grid, and each grid is identified, and they can specifically identify exactly where each artifact comes from. And there's also a depth indicator as well, because as we know, one of the ways they date a lot of things is by which layer, how deep it was in the earth. And this guy didn't do that. He basically said, well, here's a chunk of dirt over here. This is lot 1. This is lot 2. Between this rock and this wall, we'll call lot 3. And that's how he cataloged everything. At least he had the state of mind to keep everything from a lot together so they could kind of tell if everything was in the same general area or not. And again, it was roughly 1/8 of the cave floor, and it was pretty much around the perimeter of the cave is where he was doing his digging as a reference. The joint report on the excavations of Lovelock Cave in 1912 and 1924, written by Loud and Harrington and published in 1929, tells us practically nothing about how the cave came to the attention of Kroeber. So there ended up being 2 expeditions out there. I didn't get into all this because you already have an idea of the amount of expertise and professionalism went into it. But the first report of the first excavation attempt wasn't even written and fully completed until after the second one in 1924. It wasn't republished until 1929. So it's that 17 years later, they finally published the report of the first excavation. And basically, from what I read, it was talking about he did it in his spare time. He was working, he built a house, he had a family, all these different things. And his report was kind of like an afterthought that he just did in his spare time because Kroeber kept pushing him to write a report. So I also have to call into question that accuracy of that report as well. Hi, Crystal. Welcome to the show. Good to see you, Crystal J. Here's talking about the second dig. Took place in 1924. And after finishing the excavations, they collaborated on the report published in 1929, and we just kind of went over that. But what he did find, they said, was nothing short of amazing. He did find approximately 10,000 archaeological specimens that were uncovered, including tools, bones, baskets, and weapons. According to the report, 60 average height mummies were unearthed. And I want to stress that that is directly from the writings and correspondence that is on file at Berkeley. So 60 mummies in the cave. Remember, that was only 1/8 of the cave. One of the amazing things they found were these duck decoys, among the oldest known in the world. It was made out of duck skin, and the feathers were attached, and they were actually able to discern which specific species of ducks the decoys were, which I thought was pretty cool. And there are several of these. And going into the report, you find out that a lot of these artifacts were being sold just to the highest bidder. That was one of the things that kind of blew my mind was at one point in the letters, it states that the artifacts were scattered all around the country just because they were selling them off. One guy bought all the duck decoys. I think it was Kroeber. He paid like $150 for all the duck decoys that they had. Yeah, Brian. Imagine what could have been done with the certified archaeologist instead of the lunch lady. Yeah, exactly. And then how much was missing from the first guys, right? That were in there mining the bat guano. Now, here's an interesting point. A sandal over 15 inches long was excavated. So that is documented. A donut-shaped stone with 365 notches carved along the outside and 52 corresponding notches inside was found, which some scientists believe is a type of calendar. So one of the things that people will point at to indicate giants there is this 15-inch long sandal. I couldn't find a picture of it. Couldn't find any other references to it other than in the documents. That is one of the things that people will point at for showing that giants were there. Interestingly, radiocarbon dating done on follow-up visits found vegetable material dating back to 2030 BC, a human femur dating back to 1450 BC, human muscle tissue dating back to 1420 BC, and basketry dating back to 1218 BC. And why this is important to what we're talking about is this shows habitation of the cave. So the legend states that these red-haired giants went to hide in there and they were burned out and killed. But what the archaeologist dig is showing is that that wasn't the case. This was actually a habitation. They lived here for quite some time, as you can see, for dating back to 2030 BC up to 1218 BC and even earlier in time. So it does show habitation over a long time frame. Here is a picture of many of the artifacts that were recovered, different effigies and some of the wheels and stuff like that. All right, so archaeologists conclude human occupation of Lovelock Cave by this culture started in 1500 BC. Today's anthropologists call the people who lived in the area um, Lovelock culture, with a period lasting some 3,000 years. So many archaeologists believe that the Lovelock culture was replaced by the Northern Paiutes. Excuse me. So there is some debate to the veracity of the claims made regarding giants. As we looked at, there was mummies found, um, 60 of them that were identified as being normal range. We had the 15-inch sandal. Hi, Susan. Nice for you to join us. You can always come back, catch up, watch it again. We're going over the Lovelock Caves for you. During the initial excavations, there were supposed reports of mummified remains being found of two red-haired giants. One was a female, 6.5 foot tall, not really a giant, and another a male over 8 foot tall. However, there's apparently no evidence of that. There's nothing else other than a supposed report, except in the reports that I read, which was the official documentation, there was nothing in there. So what these reports were, where they came from, I couldn't track down, which is one of the indications of it being, an urban legend on it. As far as the red hair, we'll talk about that here. So, as we said before, in Sarah Hopkins' book, she didn't mention any giants, but definitely called them the barbarians. As far as the red hair, skeptics claim that a chemical staining by the earth after burial is likely the reason why the mummified remains have red hair instead of black, like most of the Indians in the area. And so that makes sense. They're mummified, and then the chemical reaction within the dirt, the clay, the sand causes the hair to bleach out, which makes logical sense to me. If you have dark hair and you have any type of red hair lineage, then you bleach it, it turns red or bright orange. As we know in my family, my mama always had red tones, and my sister's a carrot top ginger. And so when one of us guys with brown hair would lighten our hair, we'd always get a bright orange, copper kind of color to it. And so that's what they're saying is happening here for the red. A study done at the University of Nevada indicates that the giants were about 6 feet tall and not up to 8 feet tall, as had been claimed. So again, they did say there was evidence of 60 mummies, but they were standard in height. And I know the conspiracy people are out there going to go, yep, absolutely. Of course, they're going to say that. We can't have any truth of the giants out there. And I believe there is the cover up. I firmly believe that. But I don't believe that's the case here. Just because in this situation, we're not having any of the farmers or the initial people claiming it. We're not getting reports of, pictures and newspaper guys coming out and claiming they're seeing it. It's all kind of after the fact. And so that's why I think that's not the case in this scenario. Is it possible? Absolutely. Right? We never close our minds completely to stuff. Yeah, Brian Barber, 6 feet tall would be pretty tall back then compared to a lot of Native Americans. I agree. I think so. But again, we got to remember the original story never called them giants. That was something after the fact. To others, the uncovering of the 15-inch sandals at the cave is proof enough that the tale is real. Here was something I did find out interesting. Um, in the Nevada Review Minor, which is like a newspaper, a small newspaper in the area, in 1931, which was after the excavations were done and reported. In June and February of 31, it was reported that two large skeletons were found in the Humboldt Dry Lake bed near Lovelock. And I believe that was about 40 miles away from the cave, if I remember correctly. Could be 20, but I think it said like 41 miles. But again, the only report of that is in this Nevada Review Minor, and it was not found in the cave, but they were supposedly giant red-haired skeletons as well. One of them was reported to have measured 8.5 feet tall and was later described as having been wrapped in gum-covered fabric similar to Egyptian mummies, and the other one was nearly 10 feet tall. I did not find anything indicating that these were even said to be found in the cave or right by the cave. Like I said, it was like 20 or 40 miles away. And none of the mummies, none of the paperwork indicated the mummies were wrapped Egyptian style. So I think, personally, I think this is just kind of a tall tale. Newspaper was looking for stories. They heard about these excavations and mummies, and so they wrote kind of a yellow rag story just to sell papers. That's my opinion on it. Don't really have any solid evidence on that, but that's what I think happened with it. So, basic breakdown: yes, there's a Lovelock Cave. Yes, there was artifacts, skeletons, and mummies that were found. There is some limited evidence for a fire at the front of the cave. As they were digging down, they did find charring and charred grass and stuff like that around the front of the cave, which could indicate either that's where they put their fires to keep the cave warm and reflect the warmth and light back into it and keep predators from coming in, or it could indicate, like in the story, where they burnt out and killed the barbarians that were in it. There's reported but not verified evidence of giants and disputed accounts of the so-called red hair. I think it's a case of an urban legend growing out of a real story, but changed and adjusted to the narrative. So that's pretty much the breakdown of the Lovelock Caves. If you guys have any questions, throw them out there. Any comments, anything you have heard about the Lovelock Caves? Let me see what you guys got. And again, if you want a really in-depth, and I'm talking an hour and a half, 2 hour podcast about it, the Lovelock Caves, check the Lore Lodge. Lore Lodge on YouTube. Check him out. Really good show. He gets into the history of the area. He gets into the history of the Paiutes and the linguistics and all this kind of stuff. He's a historian, so that's what he gets into. Little Twisted says, very interesting. A lot of legends are like this, unfortunately. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why I find these different, I call them cryptid urban legends, and I like to flesh them out and find out where the reality is there. A lot of people, a lot of researchers I have seen use stuff like the red-haired giants as evidence of history of Bigfoot in the country. And while I understand what they're trying to do, it's a matter of, we heard this story, everybody knows it, and so I'm going to use this as evidence. Again, same thing with Leif Erikson and supposedly running into Bigfoot on the St. Lawrence, which, as we know, never happened. But I have seen it in presentations at conferences. I've seen it in books. I've seen it in podcasts and YouTube shows and everything, where people will reference the red-haired giants of Lovelock Caves in Nevada. And unfortunately, I don't see that being backed up by anything other than an urban legend, a good story. It's fun. It's a great tale, but I don't think it's true. So I'm no longer going to reference it at all as evidence of Bigfoot or anything like that. Rebecca, hey, late to the party. Sorry, we've already kind of gone through everything. We discussed the Lovelock Caves tonight. Feel free to go back over it. I'm all by myself, so I don't have anybody to banter with to kind of extend this out. Grizzly's always great at that, so we'll do what we can. I won't keep you all real long. Brian Barber. Newspapers did embellish the events, like the pictures of footprint from Ape Canyon were fake. So by adding giants in the story, now you have a moneymaker. Yeah, absolutely. And that's not just conspiracy theory, guys. That's like known fact that on slow selling times, the newspapers would boost stories and sometimes completely fabricate, wild legends and stories and stuff. And when you're doing historical research and you're an archival researcher, you have to be aware of that. And you can't always rely on some of those really old reports. You need to look for, corroborating evidence there. Are there multiple reports from different papers? That kind of stuff. Rebecca, thank you. I really appreciate that. Prayers for mama and love to be. Yeah, if everybody could just keep her in your thoughts and prayers, I really appreciate it. Positive energies, whatever you believe. I'm a praying man, so I always pray for her. Recovering from a car accident, or my fiance were in 2 years ago, and still having complications from what happened. So horrible stuff. No bueno. Any other comments or questions out there, guys? Again, we were talking about the Lovelock Caves, the legend, and how it's more legend than anything else. It's kind of based in reality, but as far as did the events actually happen, probably not. Probably not at all. Hi, Alfonso. Welcome to the show. Don't forget, guys, like, subscribe, share, boost this channel up. Grizzly has all kinds of great stuff going on. I love working with him. I love working on this channel where he just provides an outlet for people on different shows and provides the backing for them and tech expertise where we can reach an audience and we can discuss different things. He's got great shows out there. I love being a part of the family. So like, subscribe, share it up. He just started a Discord. I don't have the information on it, but look for the Discord, the Bigfoot Outlaw Discord. I know he's doing a lot of TikToking now. So a lot of stuff going on there. So he's getting out there in the social media world and having a lot of fun. Barb Hartman, I'll be praying for your mom. Thank you. It's actually my future mother-in-law. I mean, my mom can always use prayers because she's putting up with me right now. But my future mother-in-law is the one going through some medical complications right now. A little twisted. Thanks, Justin. Hope you feel better soon. I hope so. I haven't talked about it in a while, but I actually have a stage 4 congestive heart failure with a low ejection fraction. And I'm dealing with that as far as my health goes. I have good days and bad days and good weeks and bad weeks and dealing with that. So the heat right now, I don't know where you guys are at in the country or in the world, but I'm in Florida at the moment. And today we had a heat index of 113, I believe it got up to. So we are part of this heat wave, and that definitely makes it a struggle as well. Hope some of you guys are in cooler parts of the country, not having to deal with this heat as much. Barb, I'll pray for them both. Well, thank you, Barb. I really appreciate that. Brian, another great presentation. I learned a lot tonight. Now I know the real history, so thank you, Justin. Absolutely, man. I am all about true knowledge. In fact, back when I was a young pup in my early teens, when I first started researching Bigfoot and all this kind of stuff, that was my handle. True knowledge. Because that's what I'm about. I don't want to hear the fake stories. I want to know the truth, regardless of what that truth is. And that's what I like to get down to, you know. A lot of times people have asked me like, "Do you believe in Bigfoot?" And I'd say, "I don't know, but I believe there's something to the phenomenon." So even if Bigfoot is not real, the whole phenomenon behind Bigfoot is fascinating in and of itself, don't you think? The fact that it's multicultural, multi-continent, uh, thousands of reports over hundreds of years. So if there's not a real Bigfoot out there, what in the world drives the story, the psychosis, right? What drives it all? And I think learning that would be fascinating, you know, the true knowledge behind it. So Tracy Rizzo in South Carolina, and it's 79 right now. I was in North Carolina about 3 weeks ago now, I think it was. And it was downright hot. It was muggy. It was brutal. It was brutal. A little twisted. I learned a lot. Never heard of the Lovelock Caves before. Very interesting. Yeah. Um, it's just one of them stories that we come across, and old researchers is kind of ingrained in there, you know, always ingrained in there. And it's just a lot of people don't question it anymore. And that's what I like to get the bottom to. You know, it's funny because I found myself doing that. I was getting ready for a presentation in Pennsylvania a couple years ago, and I was doing it on why I believe, right? We've gone over that believability matrix a couple times. And I was getting into the historical accounts, and I put down, you know, Leif Erikson coming to Canada essentially, um, and running into Bigfoot. And I was like, you know what? I better not use that because I don't have anything to back it up. So when I started digging into it, that's when I found out it wasn't true at all. It wasn't factual. And if you guys want to hear about that again, I did a presentation on that, more in depth than this one. I was able to go back and get the original books that were cited in the legend, and I could read them for myself. And yeah, completely fabricated story. Little twisted, interesting perspective. I try, man. That's one of the things that I guess attracted a grizzly to me is I think differently. I have a different angle on things, and that just comes from my background. For those of you that know my background, I was born and raised in the Amazon jungle in Colombia, to missionary parents, and I lived literally in the middle of the Amazon with an indigenous tribe, uh, playing and hunting and fishing with them all the time. Um, and that's how I grew up. And like I say, I was never told there weren't monsters. I was always told to watch your back. I was always told there is the unknown out there. And so it had never occurred to me to not believe in something. When I first heard about Bigfoot, it wasn't I didn't believe. I was like, oh, okay, there's something else out there. And the more I learned about it, the more it was like, yeah, it just makes sense. So people ask me, when did I start believing in Bigfoot? I never did not believe. That never was an issue for me. Even our native tribe that I lived with in the Amazon had a story of an animal that could be called a Bigfoot. You know, it was definitely a hairy hominid that came out at night and was aggressive towards people and territorial and all kinds of stuff. And we can get into that in another story sometime, another podcast. Maybe next week I'll get into jungle stories and we'll keep it kind of light and have fun, and I'll show pictures of the jungle and all that growing up. Um, any other questions or comments out there? A little twisted. I had to divorce myself of my beliefs when I ran into Bigfoot. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people that have a whole paradigm shift, right? Because if you're not a believer and you run into something that shouldn't exist, that's something you have to cope with. That's a brain bender, and some people don't cope well with that. That's one of the things that I deal with when you hear skeptics going, "Oh, well, of course people are seeing Bigfoot. Everybody wants to see a Bigfoot." But there's so many reports out there from people that like they never believed in Bigfoot. Never crossed their mind until an 8 foot tall, upright walking beast, ran across the road in front of them. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I guess they're real. And they have a whole shift, a whole paradigm shift. Yeah, you guys like that, Brian? That'd be a great show. Susan F. Jungle Story Song. All right. I wasn't sure what I was gonna do next week, but I'll put together a little jungle presentation for us. I've got lots of pictures and stuff, and you can see baby Justin growing up in the jungle. A lot of the stories will be my dad's stories. He was the great jungle explorer. He was literally Percy Fawcett or Jungle Jim or, whoever it is you grew up hearing the stories about. That was his job, and we'll get into that. That's just how I grew up. I lived there until I was almost 10. Barb Hartman, a little twisted. Me too. I don't think I really believed until one was sitting 6 feet from me. Yeah, Barb, you can't deny it then, can you? You got one right there, spitting distance, as we say. You can't deny that. You can't deny that. Brian, show picked by the chat. Absolutely. I love it. I keep telling you guys, send me show ideas. It's hard sometimes for me to come up with a show. Grizzly very rarely does anything on the content of the shows because he's doing all the other stuff. It is 100% up to me. I should say 99% up to me to find show topics and to find guests and do the research and stuff. So anytime, send me something and I will look into it and see if I can pull an episode out of it. And I like finding stuff that I've never researched either. And I find that really enjoyable. I think that's a good time. Oh man, I can't send you down rabbit holes. Absolutely, man. That's why we call this show Paranormal Encrypted Rabbit Holes. I just don't hit the surface. I'm a big believer in quantum physics, quantum mechanics, string theory. I believe in the paranormal, ESP. I believe in all that stuff. I don't say I know how it works, but I believe in the possibility of it. As you guys have watched my show know, we've delved into mind speaks and vibrational frequency theory and all this kind of stuff. I don't like to get too nerdy sometimes, and sometimes I love just really getting into the science behind it. So you cannot find a rabbit hole that I can't go down. Little Twisted, send topics to me. The best way to do it is to find me on Facebook. It's just my name right there, Justin Decker. Friend me, send me a message. Hey, I heard you on the podcast, and I'll friend you. You can just send me one just through Facebook. That's usually the best way. I need to get a show specific email. I know Grizzly and I are working on that, so you can directly email me. You can email Grizzly. Let me splash him across. Let me see right here. grizzlytheparanormal@gmail.com. You can send it to him and just tell him that you want to hear me discuss it, and he'll pass it on to me as well. Or Facebook. I definitely love talking to people on Facebook. So even if you just want to hit me up, message me. Brian, I know, sends me encouraging messages every now and then, and I greatly appreciate that. I talked to Barb. Gene, I've talked to a couple times. I really appreciate it. So yeah, either email there on the bottom, grizzlytheparanormal@gmail.com. Find me on Facebook, Justin Decker. I do have one. Let me pull it up here because I can never remember because I don't use it for much, but I do have another account here that I was using for my Bigfoot research in Tennessee. It's TN Sasquatch 21@gmail.com. So TN sasquatch21@gmail.com. And you guys can email me there. That's just one I use only for like research. So I will definitely not have that get lost in the crowd. Little Twisted, have you ever heard of Brandon the Blessed? Nobody talks about him. I have not. If you want to shoot me a little background, I can definitely dig into him. I like doing shows that nobody talks about. I remember, if you guys remember, a couple of shows ago, somebody requested I do a show on Mel's Hole. When I was traveling, I was getting ready to do one, had the research together. And I told Grizzly that's what I was going to do. And he's like, wait a minute, we just did a show on Mel's Hole on one of the other shows. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? Somebody requested me to do that one. And he's like, yeah, but I guess somebody else said it on another show and they did it first. So I kind of backed off the Mel's Hole episode. We might do that a little bit later on. All right. Anybody else out there, guys? Any other comments? Brian, thanks for coming in. A Little Twisted. Appreciate the engagement. Make sure you like, subscribe, share. Appreciate it. Kev Emery, remote viewing. Grizzly has a lot of shows on remote viewing, so I don't really do a lot with that. He has shows that actually do active remote viewing during the show and stuff, so I just kind of leave that to the experts. Definitely check it out. Susan F., thanks for coming in and talking. Barb, always good to hear from you. Alfonso, thanks for popping in. Appreciate it. Tracy Rizzo, South Carolina. Appreciate you listening. All right, guys. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks for popping on. I really appreciate it. Brian, you'd like to hear my take on Mel's Hole? It's not really my take. It'll just be the research I dig up on it, because I'm just kind of like, whatever. I think it's an interesting topic, but it's fun. But everybody, let's wish Wisley. Wow, I am getting tired. Wish Grizzly safe travels as he goes about his business, and for everybody else out there as well that needs prayers, let's just bring them up. Like I said, I'm a prayer man. Brian, be safe and live fierce. Absolutely. Live Fierce is a brand I'm working on, and I'm hoping to get another store up and running and start pushing out some Live Fierce products. As Grizzly would say, good night, everybody around the world, coast to coast. Be safe. Love you all and live fierce, and we will see you all next week. I'm going to go play a little outro for us if you guys want to. Watch it at the end. There's some great outtakes. It's one of my favorite ways to close the show. I always watch it to the end. Jason Kinsey does some great bloopers for us. Good night, everybody. We'll see you all next week.
It's a grizzly.
Should we get out of here?
No. We're gonna watch and listen.
Action.
It's a grizzly.
Oh, shit, should we run?
No.
Action.
It's a grizzly.
Oh, shit, should we run?
Okay. It's a grizzly.
Are you sure it's not a chipmunk? Action. No, get out of here. Action.
It's a grizzly.
I'm out of here.
Huh. Maybe it is a chipmunk. It's a grizzly.
Are we gonna die?
I don't know. We're just going to sit here and listen and watch.
Let's get out of here, maybe.
Fall!